Hello, astrology enthusiasts. I'm Hannah, evolutionary astrologer, and today I want to talk to you about the planets Saturn and Jupiter. Two very, very important, two very powerful players in our natal charts and therefore in our lives. And what happens is that what I notice is that most people know their sun sign, their moon sign, and sometimes their ascendant, which is the same as the rising sign. But Jupiter and Saturn, they are equally as, they're just as important. And sometimes they're going to be even more important than the sun and your moon sign. And what I mean by that is, for example, let's just say you have Saturn in a very strategic place in your chart. So that Saturn is going to be pulling a lot of energy. So a lot of the lessons, the potentials, the opportunities, the challenges are going to be in that Saturn. Or for example, if you're having those planets activated by transit, for example, Jupiter, you're having a Jupiter return. So Jupiter's in the same place that it was when you're born. So that moment in your life is going to be very Jupiterian. All the Jupiter themes are going to be amplified, right? So, and what happens is they hold, Saturn and Jupiter, they hold very different key principles, different modes of operation, different lessons, different ways of shaping our life path. And they're often described as opposites in astrology. So, for example, Jupiter is all about expansion, right? While Saturn is all about contraction. Jupiter is about freedom, liberation, adventure, and Saturn is about discipline, commitment, self-control, caution. Jupiter's opportunity, taking risks, taking a leap. And Saturn is about responsibility, hard work, consistency, show up, routine. So you see how they're very different from each other, right? They have very different intentions, they have different modes of operation, they have different lessons. But really, they are meant to work in tandem. They're meant to work together. They're meant to be collaborating. So your Jupiter in your chart and your Saturn in your chart, the deepest intention of this pair is to work in collaboration, to work together. So before anything else, I want to kind of separate them so you have an idea, a better idea of what each planet is about, and then we're going to bring them together. So let's start with Jupiter. Jupiter is known as the great benefic, right? In astrology, it has that really good reputation. It's about expansion, it's about optimism, it's about having faith that things are going to work out. It's about abundance and wisdom and opportunity and luck. There's a lot here about Jupiter being kind of that force of luck in our charts and in our lives. And Jupiter brings new opportunities. It's almost like it's saying, yes, go more, take a chance. Why not? That's a great, sentence to summarize Jupiter. It's why not? So it's about taking risks and it's about having that optimism, that positive thinking, that and trusting really that things are going to work out. There's a lot of positivity in Jupiter. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of enthusiasm. And Jupiter fills us with that sense of possibility, with that confidence, and even vision, right? So in our natal chart, Jupiter shows where and how we find meaning in our lives. And where we're meant to grow, where we're meant to expand, where we're meant to have more in life. So life, through Jupiter, through our Jupiters, life needs to get better. Life needs to get better somehow. So, for example, if you have Jupiter in Taurus, it's about more wealth. It's about increasing your financial resources. It's about expanding your security through the material world, through things and money and assets and land. If you have a Jupiter in Gemini, growth is going to come through knowledge. through expanding your horizons. It's a lot about learning and studies and traveling and communication. And Gemini brings in multicultural experiences and books and classes and studies. Jupiter and Virgo, you're meant to grow in your work, Virgo, in your service. So this placement is all about, you know, the exponential growth through the person's career, their skills, their dedication to always improve their skills, improve their, it's like it's always working on their work type of thing. So wherever your Jupiter is placed, by sign and by house, it's going to show you the areas of life where you're meant to experience growth, abundance, and that deeper sense of purpose. That's going to give you meaning. When you are growing through that experience, your life feels meaningful. Your day feels meaningful, right? So Jupiter's role, Jupiter's function really is about expanding wherever it's at. So it's about filling us with some sort of a vision. So it's that part of us that say, book the ticket, launch the business, say yes to that opportunity without thinking too much, without bringing that critical mind, without too much hesitation. So it feels like that wise teacher, the wise teacher who believes in you, the wise teacher who encourages you to take a leap, and that reminder that life is full of possibility, right? It's cheering you on, like in helping you achieve your potential, that to take a leap, to take a, to really take on life's opportunities and how that's going to take you to the places you need to go. So again, it's about getting in touch with what gives us meaning and purpose and our own personal truth. It's what moves me and fills me up and makes me feel like life is worth living type of thing, right? So again, you book the ticket, right? You take the leap, you trust life, you say yes to the opportunity. So it sounds really great, right? Dreamy and exciting and expansive. It's like an adventure. Amazing, dreamy, awesome. But here's the thing about Jupiter. Because Jupiter in our own consciousness is wired for growth and risk and possibility, it's going to take us, it's going to push us past the edge because it wants to stretch, to explore, to see what could happen, right? And it's driven by faith. It's going to work out. Let's do this. But what happens through our Jupiter is that sometimes we have to go too far before we recognize where the limit is? So it's like, how much cake can I eat before I get sick? Where is that line where, I realize that this is too much sugar? That's very much Jupiter. And we're going to learn through that experience. We're going to learn through those trials and errors. We push and then we get some sort of a backlash. So a lot of our Jupiter lessons also come through mistakes. Um, my teacher, Maurice Fernandez, he gives the great example of when you're baking and you put too many eggs, you put too much flour, you're wasting a lot of ingredients. You put too many chocolate chips in the cake or in the cookies. And so there's a lot of waste when you try a new recipe. That's Jupiter. Or when you're launching a business, you have that big vision of all the things that could be. So you take on too many loans, or you scale things too fast, or you're overspending because you know what the potential is. You have that vision, right? So that's all through Jupiter. It's not really stopping to ask, is this grounded? Is this wise? Is this sustainable? Is this practical? It's not thinking long term. So when the shadow of Jupiter creeps in, what we can have is too much overconfidence, exaggeration, overindulgence is too much cake, right? Too much spending. And because it's not paying attention to the limitations and the limits, Many ways it can even avoid having to deal with the limits. We get through Jupiter, we get carried away. We can lose perspective. And it can be it's like too fast, too furious, and even avoid taking responsibility for things and overindulgence. So this, think about Jupiter and Sag, Jupiter's the ruler of Sagittarius. Um, they rule gambling for a reason, right? It's like luck is on my side. I'm just gonna put all my money on the table type of thing. So you see that Jupiter without the grounding, and the yes to life all the time. Yes, 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 let's do it. Let's take a leap. It can become reckless. And this is where Saturn enters the picture, right? So Saturn is another great teacher, but it has a very different way of teaching. It has a very different methodology. It's a very different experience through Saturn, and it's known as a great malefic. So you see how Jupiter gets all the good reputation while Saturn is like, the great malefic. Because Saturn teaches us structure, limitation, discipline, mastery truly, and responsibility, and how we don't have unlimited time. We don't have unlimited resources. We have to have a plan. We have to be cautious. We have to be practical. So while Jupiter is rushing, Saturn is telling us, wait a minute, slow down. Let's test things. Let's see if this is really a good plan. Let's see if it's going to bring results, good results. Let's see if it's going to really work out long term. So there's a sense of Saturn asks us to verify things and to prove that something is really strong enough. So the function of Saturn is to, as Jupiter is opening the doors, Saturn keeps them closed until we're ready, because it's really asking us to help something, to build something that will last, that is strong, that won't just fall apart when the first challenge arrives, when there's the first strong wind, something just, falls down. So it's testing to see what is real and what is not. So instead of the teacher, Jupiter's a teacher that's encouraging us and saying, yes, take the leap. Saturn is like that strict mentor, the master craftsman that will demand our best work. Not only because you're capable of this greatness, because you have so much potential in you, but it's about reaching your potential in a way that, that will really last, that will really attain something that you can rely on. So this is why it's asking us to commit and to put all of ourselves in it. So it can feel like that strict mentor or even a strict parent that while Jupiter brings the fun, Saturn brings that sense of things being a little more rigid and more strict, but as a necessary thing, really, because it's going to test our work, it's going to test our timing, it's going to test our integrity. Are you really walking your talk? So you see how it's really easy for Saturn to get the bad rep as a great malefic because it's demanding us patience, effort, and humility. Through Jupiter, we gain more confidence. But Saturn teaches us also to be humble. In life, we really need both, right? So you see how Saturn really helps to balance the influence of Jupiter. But if it's too much Saturn, if we don't have the Jupiter, what can happen is that it can become very harsh. We can become very harsh, very restrictive, very rigid, very hyper focused on the consequences of things. And we can also not take risks. We can become too afraid of the unknown. We don't take the leap and we're going to resist change. So it can become too calculating, too cautious, too inflexible, and lack spontaneity. Life can, through Saturn, life becomes all about work, all about duty instead of exploration and joy, right? And if our Saturn is pulling too much, we can even feel blocked in our own sense of expansion. There can be a lot of self-doubt, this sense of I can't, or I'm not ready, sometimes even tied to guilt and perfectionism and fear. So here Jupiter comes in and offers the antidote. It reminds Saturn, so our Jupiter reminds our Saturn that growth requires faith too. That structured plans, they're meant to serve life and not to imprison us. So when Saturn is all alone, it's just effort, 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 work and work and work and discipline and commitment and showing up. But there's no hope and optimism and fun and joy. And it's discipline without that, even that meaning of something greater. And so it's very much like having those two parents, like one that checks your homework, that makes sure you brush your teeth before you go to bed. And then the other parent is the one that tells you can stay late, you can stay up late, you can eat dessert before dinner type of thing. Another really interesting thing about their relationship is that in astrology, Saturn is often called the Lord of Karma, right? It's the one that delivers the consequences, the one who teaches us through that law of cause and effect. But Jupiter plays a profound role in karma too. And this is something we need to talk about because remember that through Jupiter, we take chances, we push forward, we take risks, we dream big. And the question is, how far can I go? How far can I take this? How much money can I spend before going bankrupt, type of thing? How much dessert can I have before getting diabetes? How much sugar can I eat before getting sick? Right? So as we're pushing forward, we are also creating ripple effects. We're also, um, taking actions that have consequences. This is part of the learning process. This is part of the learning mechanism. This is part of being human. So while Saturn enforces the karmic law and shows us that there are consequences, that we can't just do whatever we want. And for every action, yes, there is a consequence, there is an effect, there's an aftermath, but really, Jupiter's the one initiating it, you know, because it is how we grow and expand and explore uncharted territory. But with that comes the potential for excess, missteps, and even an overconfidence and sometimes even unconscious behavior. So every risk we take through our Jupiter can become that seed. It can become that karmic imprint of some sort that we might at some point need to realign. And this is where Saturn helps us to pay our debts, to realign what might be out of order, and also to receive our dues as well, where maybe there are things that, you know, need to be in some sort of way, there are debts that there was someone else or something else that needs to come in and help us to realign that. So you see how together Jupiter and Saturn, they shape not only what we build in this life, but how we evolve through this experience. And how, in order to live a life that's meaningful and joyful and successful, and also balanced and practical and grounded in a way that we can sustain ourselves. We have what we need to survive here. We need them both. So it's not about fighting each other and saying one is good and the other one is bad. That's just really bad astrology and a really bad way of looking at the planets. But it's about them, not fighting each other, but dancing together. This is how I like to think about the planets, that they're dancing together. And our job is to make sure they're dancing to the same rhythm. Each one has their style, each one has their way of dancing, but they're not stepping on each other's toes. because when they work together, when they dance together, and when your Jupiter and your Saturn move in harmony, your Jupiter will dream big and your Saturn will build that from the ground up. Jupiter's going to take the leap, your Jupiter is going to take the leap, and your Saturn is going to check the landing. And your Jupiter is going to continuously show you what is possible and the potential. Where your Saturn is going to make sure it's real, it's lasting, and it's going to bring long-term results. Okay. So Jupiter brings the growth and expansion while Saturn checks if the foundation is strong enough, solid enough. And that's all of the foundations in our lives. And how they can be sustained and how they can really truly sustain your vision, right? So it's vision meeting discipline to make it real, and expansion with integrity, with grounding and sustainability, and ultimately growth that endures through time. So it is about working hard, but it's also about making space for joy and adventure and possibility and wonder. So it is about sometimes having dessert before dinner. And it is about bold leaps and risk taking, but also these times of bold leaps and in risk taking, but also times for steady effort and long-term planning, right? So think of Saturn and Jupiter in your chart as these two inner voices and those two parents within you. Jupiter is the inspired one, the optimistic one, the one that says, go for it, take the chance. And Saturn is the ground and the wise one that asks, but are you ready? Is this really built to last? Ultimately, they represent our mastery. So they may seem like very different sides of the coin and very and opposites, but truly they are here to collaborate. And that's the deepest intention of your Saturn Jupiter, of this partnership and this beautiful dance between dreaming and actually doing. Yeah, believing what could be and what could actually truly last. So take a look at your own chart, see where your Jupiter is, what sign, what house, and then you do the same with your Saturn, what sign and what house your Saturn is in, because they're going to reveal how you're meant to grow and how you're meant to sustain that growth. And even if they're not necessarily making an aspect to each other, they're still operating within this dynamic. They're still meant to collaborate. But if your Jupiter and your Saturn are in aspect, let's just say if they're together, if they're in a conjunction, or if they're squaring each other, that's a 90-degree angle, or Jupiter and Saturn are opposite each other, when they're right facing each other from different parts, the different sides of the wheel, or maybe they're even sextiling or semi-sextiling or trining, like that conversation becomes even more personal, even more potent. And that's an invitation truly to integrate the dreamer within you and the builder within you as well. So I hope you liked this video. I hope you liked and enjoyed this mini lesson of these two giants. They're truly giants. And if you enjoyed it, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And thank you so much for your time, and I will see you next time in another video.